Alrighty, what's up, Jesse? So,
What's going on?
nothing much, man. Good seeing you. Good seeing the Nova.
Yes, sir.
It's been probably a couple years. I saw this car. I know it's gone through some transformations.
Right.
So I'll kind of just let you lead the way,
Okay.
and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, so I bought the car in 2014. It was just bought it for a bunch of cobwebs underneath, and I had my eye on it for about a year, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna knock on the door and see if he's willing to sell it. And sure enough, he was willing to part ways with it, and it was pretty interesting. That's a story within itself.
Right.
Because he told me, you know what, people come all the time asking to buy this car.
Right.
And I asked him, well, what made you choose me? You know, what made you say yes to sell it to me? And he said, you know what, I just think you're the right guy.
Nice.
So that, you know, kind of made me feel proud.
Yeah.
You know, he just said the way I presented myself, and he seemed that I would be a good caretaker for it.
Right on.
And so yeah, I tried to keep my word. I actually just stopped by his house, you know, last week, and showed him the car, showed him everything I've done to it.
Okay.
And so it started off as a very humble car. It was his wife's car.
Yeah.
It was a 307.
Right.
It was a V8, but it was the smaller one. It had a 2-barrel carburetor, turbo 350 transmission,
Right.
single exhaust, believe it or not, you know. So
Yeah.
it was completely unmodified, and I drove it like that for a couple years.
Right.
Rebuilt the transmission, rebuilt the carburetor, you know, new belts, new hoses, new battery, just enough to get it running so I could enjoy it and drive it. And I had it like that for 2 years. A couple of my buddies from the track, they convinced me to LS swap it.
Nice.
So once I made that decision, I sold my Fox Body Mustang. I bought a LS1 and a 4L60, and just started getting to work.
Right.
What parts to buy to help out with the conversion.
Right.
So yeah, I could.
And I remember
engine.
at that time,
Yeah.
when you were kind of making a decision between to go a small block 350 or LS, I think there was some.
I was even considering a big block, because at first, since it was like such a virgin looking car, I was thinking about doing a L78 396 clone or tribute car, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Which was the highest trim or highest engine package for this year, 69. But then I, you know, kind of decided against it, figuring that the LS1 will still give, you know, comparable performance, but a lot more drivability. And I figure if it's more drivable, you know, it's more livable, then I'll drive it more often.
Sure.
You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yep.
Because
Exactly.
Even with the carburetor, sometimes it's a pain to start on a, you know, winter day, you know, stuff like that. So
Right.
definitely EFI. You know, I was interested in, you know, having an overdrive transmission.
Sure.
You know, makes things more livable on the freeway and stuff like that.
Right.
And then I pretty much daily drive it to work.
Okay.
So you know, it's a very reliable car. It's
Yeah.
And it has a hell of a time, you know.
Right.
When you get on the throttle too.
Yeah, and I think so. You know, between going with a a small or big block that was kind of rowdy, more temperamental, I think the LS has allowed you to kind of have basically a modern car,
Yeah,
a modern drivetrain in a classic, and
exactly.
it's
For me, it's best of both worlds.
Right. Right.
Because, you know, I respect the performance of
Sure.
the late model cars, you know, with, you know, LS motors, Coyote motors, you know, even
Yeah.
the Dodge Challengers with the Hemis.
Right.
They all have great performance, but nothing really interests me
Yeah.
as much as a classic or an old school car.
Right.
So when it, I don't know, just my personal taste.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
it's the best of
Yeah.
both worlds. You
Yeah.
got the classic body lines, you know, but
Yeah.
you have
And-
all the advantages of a modern car.
Right. And we don't have to elaborate, but we know the potential of the LS engine.
Right.
And you know, it's a very popular swap, and
Right.
I mean, we can go on for days about this engine, but really
I haven't barely even tapped into that potential yet,
and
because it's completely stock. Mine
the turbo 350 or
turbo
which
350, 360
I remember
automatic, yeah.
the day that came out, we had a guy pull his truck up in the driveway, and that engine literally came out of this car into the bed of a truck and was gone, right? So you kind of coordinated that good.
Gave me exactly what I was asking. I didn't think it was worth that much.
Yeah.
But I just threw $1,000 out there on Craigslist.
Sure.
And he came.
I remember that.
Discuss price, and he was like, "So how much you gonna take for it?" I was like, "Well, $1,000, just like the post says." And then he gave me exactly what I wanted.
Right.
You know, he wasn't even really trying to bargain. So,
right.
So that was kind of cool.
That was quick. I mean, motor out on the engine stand.
Right.
Truck pulls up in your driveway. We lower it in. It's gone. 307 turbo 350, and then talk about as that process of doing the swap. Talk about the easy upfront part, but then talk about some of the challenges, some of the details that took.
You know, the engine swap.
And right.
One thing that, you know, people might not realize is that it's a different situation where you're putting something in there that has never been there before, or was never intended to go in there. But luckily, I had some guidance on, you know, what swap kits to get or what swap parts to buy, and that helped out a lot as far as fitment.
Right.
So, like I was saying earlier, my buddy Kurt at Satis Customs told me to get the muscle rods kit. He said make sure the headers are from the same company as the motor mounts and the transmission mounts, and just starting with that.
Then also you had to go to
a lot.
Right, and then you also had to use a Holley Nova swap pan, right?
It was a Holley 302-1 swap pan to clear the cross member and the steering linkage.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. And then you also, let's talk about the fuel tank, because I remember having the right type of fuel system for a modern engine. I went
with Tanks Inc. and got their whole setup. It was a deeper sump tank.
Yep.
With I think I went a 255 LPH pump, and then like just a Corvette filter and regulator.
Right on. That was a pretty shout out to the company that supplied the tank, because I remember that was a pretty easy.
Yeah,
it fit like
everything.
Fit like factory.
They had everything. And then also the wiring harness.
Right.
That was also pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of people use the factory wiring harness out of the donor vehicle. That wasn't an option for me since
wasn't available.
Yeah, it wasn't available. So I got a PSI conversions wiring harness, and that was really easy.
Okay.
Really easy. It came with like relays for fuel pumps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, the directions were pretty clear. And it was just plug and play, really.
Okay.
Yep. So the biggest challenges that I needed is that was just putting it all together, making it work.
Right.
And luckily, my dad was able to help me out with that.
Okay.
A lot, just doing the final wiring. As far as getting everything mounted up into the car.
Yeah.
The muscle rods swap kit made it really easy.
Okay. And then the initially it was a 4L65 or 4L60.
It was a LS1 out of a 98 Firebird Trans Am.
Okay.
And the 4L60 out of the same car.
Yeah.
And I had it like that for a couple years, but then I was racing at Sacramento Raceway, and second gear blew up. It took out fourth and reverse.
Right on.
So I just limped it home. It sat for a while, you know, regrettably.
Yeah.
I was kind of annoyed with it, you know, just busy with family and kids and work and all that. But I knew going back in, I was like, do I want to rebuild a 4L60 and just have it blow up again, or do you want something stronger? So I decided to go 4L80.
Right. And then at that time, you also did a converter.
Oh yeah. Did
a converter change
higher
as well.
Stock converter. So it was a stock converter before with the 4L60, but now with the 4L80, I have a 3600 stall converter.
Right.
And it really gets into the power band immediately when you punch it.
Right. And I remember you saying initially going from a stock converter to a little bit higher of a stall, there was some kind of getting used to the feel of it, just kind of how it drove and stuff and how the power came on.
Yeah, it's trippy. So it actually drives better if you give it more throttle.
Yeah.
And so that converter could start engaging faster.
Right. Nice. Well, let's take a look. I'm just gonna open up. Just the originality of the car, to me, is kind of what I'm impressed with. You know, for a car that's a 69, I mean, the bench seats and the hood line, or the roof liner, the back seats, the vinyl, all the stuff is pretty much here. And then, so, you know, when I look at the Ford over there, this is one place I give Chevy credit, is these doors, the way their door, like the way they open, close, the function of the doors in the interior in the 60s Chevy. Yeah. I think in a lot of ways I could see why. That's one of the reasons why people kind of enjoy the Chevy. Right. And then this gauge, I really like. Is that a Dakota?
Yeah, this is Dakota Digital.
Nice.
So really it was the most stock looking gauge cluster. So that's why I went that route. Right. Because they have, like, you know, the full digital panels. I wasn't really into that. Yep.
And the thing about these
ones still have the analog needles and
stuff. And they don't do too much. Like, they're a very clean gauge. They work really well from everything I've heard and from what you've told me. And yeah, it doesn't leave you wanting for nothing. So right. And how's that fuel? Is that fuel thing accurate too?
I need to adjust it. Okay. But I notice it stays pretty much on full. Yeah. And then once it starts getting really low, then it'll start coming down. Okay. But it's not accurate, but I think there is a way to adjust it. I just haven't taken the time to do that yet. Right.
Now let's talk about going forth down the road. Future plans with the car. Like, what's your long-term view? Where would you like to go, or is this something you just enjoy? You think it's just right the way it is now? Or
long-term, I guess I'd like to do the paint and body. I mean, the body's fairly straight. There are, like, some very, very minor rust issues, like a show car. Right. So I could drive it to work and not really worry about it. Absolutely. I could take it to the store and not really worry about it.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I say once you spray this thing and it's something that, you know, you keep up with, you start buffing and polishing, and I'll be honest with you, after I got my car painted, it really did change, like,
one thing
where I would park it and how I treated it.
I don't want this car to get to a point where I'm scared to drive it.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
I want it.
Do you think because of the paint's so clean and it's I think there is something with that, and you just don't want to ding it up. And so I think, you know, when you go down that road, you know, it's just what happens. You know. And you know, you got to maintain the paint, you got to, you know, take care of it. So obviously it's just something that you don't really mean for that to happen, but it just does. So
well, and other than that, as far as performance upgrades, I definitely want to do a cam and all the associated components to go with that. Right. So I was thinking about, you know, a sloppy stage 2 cam. I've seen that those perform pretty well. Sure. And maybe a fast intake and a bigger throttle body. I think those 2 upgrades will definitely open it up a lot. Yeah. And as far as, like, drag racing goes, I do some, like, street legal fun drags at Sacramento Raceway. Okay. It's gone as fast as 13.0 at 106. That was before the torque converter and the transmission swap. Nice. That was with the 4L60 and the stock converter. Okay. Now I think it would do a bit better, you know, since it has the 3600 stall. Right. So I'm thinking it might be a mid 12-second car now, and I'm pretty sure the cam and intake will help me reach my goals of being like a mid to high 11-second car. Since, you know, I have a couple buddies who are around that range, and
with similar combinations.
Yeah, to where it's still a street car. They don't have to trailer it to the track. You know, it's plenty streetable, but they're still out there having a lot of fun. Sure. You know, because, you know, there's always someone faster out there, but like I said earlier, once you get to a point where you're afraid to drive it on the street, I think that eliminates some of the usefulness of a car, and it's not as enjoyable at that point. Yeah, and I think I could still throw my kids in the back, you know, and take it to the burger shack, and, you know. Yep.
And you can see he's not lying. He's got the baby seat in there, or the car seat in there. So
one of them, I took the other one out.
Yeah. But yep. And I'll tell you, man,
like, about it because I have it insured through Haggerty.
Sure.
Way more than what I have in it. So, So I mean, I don't want someone to steal my car, but if it were to happen, I think I would be making out pretty good.
Yeah.
And I'll be able to definitely get into another one.
Sure.
Yeah. Just because
I will say,
did all the work basically myself, and you know what I couldn't do, you know, my dad helped me. So
I will say this though, as you modify the car, as the car becomes, let's say, something that maybe you didn't intend to be that nice, or it all of a sudden it's just upon you, it's still fun. Yeah. Even if it becomes more of a toy or something that is not as practical, it'll always be fun. It'll just be kind of different. So I'll just say that, so that way, you know, I think there's you know, multiple ways at looking at it, but obviously the practicality of it, like you said, being able to take the kids in it and just travel around, I think it's, I know something that you really like that. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me to enjoy my hobby, I have to, you know, include my family, you know, make my wife and my kids comfortable too. So that's why I did the vintage AC. So you know, they'd be willing to come along. Nobody wants to be sweating their face off in the middle of summer in California. Going to a car show. Right.
Yeah, that vintage air kit is pretty spiffy.
Oh, this works. It gets the job done.
All right. Well,
as far as other performance upgrades, I think the last thing I would do is probably either a 4-link like you did in the Falcon, just so I could fit some wider tires in the back.
Yep. Of course.
Or relocate the shocks from outboard of the leaf springs to inboard of the leaf springs. That would free up a lot of space as well.
Right.
Because there is some rubbing with the Mickey Thompsons that I have on there now.
Okay. Right on. Well, yeah. Let's we covered a pretty good amount of the story with the car, kind of where you are right now. So let's see if we can get out on the road and see what they do.
Okay.
Alrighty. All right.